And our players across the league are too often the targets. This is not something any player in this league should have to tolerate.
Do you think Caitlin's being used as a pawn? Caitlin didn't bring racism to the WNBA. This has been happening. And that, I think, is what's been such a shock for all of us, that other people are surprised by this. We've been trying to...
It all started. Stay until the very end to see why the Indiana Fever are shaking things up in a major way. The franchise just dropped a series of big announcements, including one shocking revelation about Caitlin Clark that sent fans into a frenzy. At the same time, Sue Bird came out swinging, brutally calling out racism in the WNBA in a moment many say was long overdue. And let's be real, legends, MVPs, and gold medalists have all pushed through similar struggles before. But this time, someone finally had the courage to say it out loud. Sue didn't speak just to hear her own voice. She came armed with receipts, and what followed was a powerful response from the Indiana Fever camp that no one saw coming.
Continue, there is one thing I want to reset, that we want to reset, and it's the language being used around fans. Fever fans, Caitlin fans, new fans. That actually has to go.
The greatest thing is that she didn't hesitate to step into the fire, going unfiltered on a no-holds-barred podcast with Megan Rapinoe, fully aware it could cost her everything. She flat-out questioned why Caitlin Clark has become the target of so much racial hatred, why her historic achievements and explosive sales numbers keep being brushed aside, and she even dared to suggest that something deeper, something darker, might be happening inside the league itself, hinting at a quiet conspiracy against her.
Today, did you, when you went and kind of swatted at Caitlin, did you intend to hit her in the eye? And if so, could you just, or if not, either way, could you talk about what happened on that play?
I don't even know why I would intend to hit anybody in the eye. That doesn't even make sense to me. But no, I didn't. I didn't know I hit her, actually. I was trying to make a play on the ball, and I guess I followed through and I hit her. So obviously it's never intentional. That's not even like the type of player that I am. So yeah.
Did you and Marina kind of laugh about it afterwards? It looked like there was later on in the game they caught you guys laughing about it.
No, I just told you I didn't even know I hit her, so I can't laugh about something I didn't know happened.
It all started when Dejanai Carrington was pressed by reporter Christine with a question about the strange situation after the game. At first, it sounded like just another routine media moment, the kind athletes face all the time under bright lights and post-game pressure. But this time, it didn't stay routine for long. Megan Rapinoe jumped in and revealed that, beneath the surface-level innocence of the question, there was a racial undertone woven into its phrasing. And in that instant, the entire narrative shifted, forcing fans to look at the situation through a completely different and far more uncomfortable lens.
Obviously, hearing it initially, my visceral reaction was like, that's not good. That doesn't feel good. That feels racist, to be honest.
To be honest, that seems racist. It seems that Sue was unable to let this go. Without slipping into her usual rebellious stance or launching a full attack on the media, especially ESPN, she drew a sharper line instead, saying the question itself wasn't automatically racist, but the way the media twisted and amplified it absolutely was, calling that part deeply troubling. Sue made it painfully clear that athletes of color are held under a microscope far more intense than their white counterparts. The moment a black athlete is involved, everything suddenly escalates. It's no longer just a play, a comment, or a mistake. It becomes a controversy, a confrontation, or worse, a racial flashpoint, and that double standard is exactly what she exposed.
I disagree with you on Christine Brennan's question being dickish, or maybe she shouldn't have answered it, because it was something that was out there that everybody was talking about. And so she asked the question, and it was a great opportunity for Carrington to, on the record, say, no, I didn't do it. And that's all that happened. So I do disagree with you. I don't think it was a dickish question. I think it was a fine question based on what was going on at the moment.
Sue made the connection and said this was part of a much bigger picture, even while she was still warming up. Christine went after both the WNBA and the media for letting the rumors spiral out of control, even though she likely never expected it to escalate this far. Sue believes that if Day had been a white athlete, the situation would have drawn far less attention. On the flip side, she said if a white player had been in Carrington's position, the media would have built a full-blown narrative around it, exploring every angle and every possible consequence without hesitation.
It led to the Twitter trolls and bots taking over. And what started there was this narrative of petty, jealous players hating on Caitlin. That's really what happened. That's where it started, that we must just dislike her, that we look at her side-eyed, that we don't want her to come in the WNBA and be successful, that we're hating on her, right? So we're petty and we're...
It resulted in the unreal. Twitter was suddenly overrun by bots and trolls, and it all traced back to one ugly idea. That there were bitter, jealous players who simply despised Caitlin Clark. That it started with, "We just don't like her. We don't want her to succeed in the WNBA." Envy. Pettiness. That's how it was framed. And then Sue revealed the spark that set the whole thing off. One casual but explosive comment from Diana Taurasi herself. A legend of the game with a few words, unintentionally lit the fuse. What followed was chaos. The kind that spreads faster than anyone can control once it hits the internet. Sue Bird, the steady voice in the storm, had to step in and restore some sense to the madness. But by then the damage was already done. And when Sue said things got ugly, she didn't mean trash talk or competitive fire. She meant the moment the conversation stopped being about basketball at all, crossed into something darker. Hate speech, racism, privilege, every toxic narrative you can imagine flooding in at once. And that's when it became clear this was never just about a game anymore.
Not at any point did I think anybody was playing dirty against Caitlin. Not at any point did I think Caitlin was targeted. And I'm going to stop on that word because what happened was these petty jealousy narratives that got formed. Then when the season started and people saw people blocking Caitlin's shot or picking her up full court, it then became, oh, they're targeting her. Oh, they're trying.
When Sue Bird revealed Caitlin was dealing with far more than just elbows and trash talk. She didn't sugarcoat a single word. Caitlin wasn't just bracing for symbolic hits. She was dodging real ones. Every time she stepped on the floor, she felt like she had to prepare for more than defensive schemes and scouting reports. It went beyond fair competition. Players were openly mocking her, targeting her. Sue made it clear this wasn't just physical defense or the normal grind of a WNBA game. What Caitlin was facing was personal, ugly, and fueled by something deeper. And Sue didn't ignore the racial dimension either. Caitlin's situation wasn't only about attention or promotion. It was tangled in conversations about racism, privilege, and how some players of color viewed her meteoric rise as symbolic of something far bigger than basketball. Sue laid it bare. This was no longer just a sports issue. It was the collision of long-standing racial tension, resentment, and real-time frustration, playing out on the court with Caitlin trapped in the middle.
That it is right now, like it's popping right now, and just being able to know that, like, I'm happy where we are. I'm happy to see all the girly girls being able to pop it and look cute on the runway and being able to continue that because
she didn't get a free pass either, far from it. She spoke openly, sharply, criticizing Caitlin Clark and even calling out parts of her fan base for racism. And she did it without hesitation. She also spoke just as candidly about Angel Reese and Alyssa Thomas, the way only someone deeply embedded in the culture can. Reese, outspoken and unapologetic since her LSU days. Thomas, a rock for the Connecticut Sun. And the argument they raised cut straight to the core of the controversy. That Caitlin had become the league's poster child for white privilege, that the attention and protection she received came not just from her talent, but from the color of her skin. It was no longer just a basketball debate. It was a collision of identity, perception, power, and resentment, all unfolding in real time under the brightest color of her skin.
All of what I've said led to this group of people being able to push those racist agendas, which really has been, in my opinion, the cause of all of this. And everybody from this moment on has, not everybody, but a lot of people have been operating under the assumption that these narratives, particularly the targeting narrative, is true. And that has...
And what about her? She wasn't going to stand for it. She used every tool at her disposal to show, loud and clear, that this narrative was completely false and needed to end. This isn't the case, she declared, because what Reese and Thomas were doing wasn't just unfair. It was harmful, undermining the integrity of the game and spreading a story that had no basis in reality.
Racism has been impacting the WNBA well before this year. This is not a new thing.
Sure.
This is, and in that way, I do think Caitlin's being used as a pawn. Caitlin didn't bring racism to the WNBA. This has been happening. And that, I think, is what's been such a shock for all of us, that other people are surprised by this. We've been trying.
The bird was thinking, look, Caitlin's getting all this attention, but it's not because she's white. It's because she's an extraordinary player. She saw how the whole situation had been warped into a narrative that didn't reflect reality. And she wasn't about to let Reese and Thomas turn it into something it wasn't. Even with Caitlin in the spotlight, Bird stayed steady, recognizing that her dominance on the court is undeniable and commands respect, no matter the chatter off
She's obviously doing amazing. Her game speaks for itself. I think my favorite part is just women's basketball, women's sports really, but women's basketball has been on the rise. And it's kind of like what Magic and Bird was to men's basketball. Like this moment, we kind of needed something.
This is
to
that
just
moment.
and Caitlin's that moment. And I think a lot of it has to do with her logo 3.
Sue revealed that she had personally spoken with Caitlin Clark and gotten to know her, one of the most striking admissions in the discussion. And when it came to the narrative of white privilege that Thomas and Reese were pushing, Sue was clear. Caitlin isn't an athlete handed advantages because of her skin. Like everyone else, she's earned her spot through relentless work and climbing the ranks. Bird didn't shy away from acknowledging that the situation is far more complex than outsiders realize, and that the false narrative needed to be dismantled. The problem isn't casual fandom. It's a segment of the Fever fan base that has taken things too far, pushing hate speech, racial agendas, and online division disguised as fan loyalty. At that point, what started as simple fandom turns toxic, and the situation spirals into something much darker. Sue says the whole racial controversy has been twisted into a weapon against Caitlin on the court. The charge of racism, instead of addressing real issues, has become an excuse for targeting her, and it's gone far beyond basketball. Bird made it clear. This is no longer just a competitive game. Caitlin is being unfairly singled out, whether from jealousy, resentment, or misused grievances. She's not only dodging verbal attacks, she's avoiding rough hits and elbows, and things are getting far too personal. Kennedy Carter's cheap shot on Caitlin, as she herself noted, wasn't part of the game. It was something else entirely. Sue doesn't mince words. The racial bias debate has been weaponized and it benefits no one. Players like Reese and Thomas escalate the situation, turning the court into a battleground for personal vendettas instead of addressing the league's true racial issues. Bird isn't saying race shouldn't be discussed. She's saying this isn't the way. Rather than uniting people, this behavior is driving division, leaving the question. How will the Indiana Fever respond to what's happening to their star? This isn't what true Fever fans or true supporters of the WNBA are about. It doesn't reflect our team, our values, or any of us in the slightest. But now, we're ready to move forward, and it's an electrifying moment. What's next? How do we climb from 6th place into the top 4 seeds? None of us were prepared for what it would be like. Caitlin is a phenomenal player, and we knew she'd make an immediate impact. But like any rookie stepping into the world's best league, some adjustment was expected. Yet she didn't just adjust, she dominated. Caitlin's competitiveness pushes her to excel in every drill, every practice, every single moment. This year, that relentless drive has taken her to a level that puts her in a category all her own. She elevates everyone around her with her skill, vision, and ability to involve every teammate. But honestly, she surpassed even the highest expectations, because none of us truly knew what her impact would look like. So what's next? The Fever are on the verge of a major transformation, even if it hasn't been spelled out yet. No one is untouchable now that Amber Cox is in charge. Kelly Krafoff has returned as the Fever's president of basketball and business operations, and the organization just brought in a new general manager. As players leave and new ones join over the winter, the front office will make sweeping changes. Caitlin Clark may see some close allies go, but she'll also witness departures she might quietly celebrate. like head coach Christy Sides. Indeed, they are set to part ways with their own coach this winter. These moves will reshape the Indiana Fever and set the team on a new trajectory. So what do you think? With a retooled squad built around Caitlin Clark, can the Fever compete for a top 4 spot in 2025? Everything points to yes.